Welcome to Michael Potts F1, every moment from every Grand Prix. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm great, Michael. Nice to see you. I can't quite tell if you're on the Buda or Pest side, but you're definitely in Budapest. Excited to break down Spa with you and talk about this race coming up this weekend.
Budapest is magnificent. It's one of the most beautiful cities that we go to each year. It's really, really lovely being here. The thing is, it's not as hot as everyone was expecting. It's a lot colder. Today's only about 24 degrees. It's windy, it's overcast. And I believe for the race weekend, it's going to be similar. So that could change things a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, normally it's a stinking hot race, so we'll see which team's cars do better. But before we get into Hungary, Michael, we have to talk a bit about Spa. What did you think about how that weekend unfolded?
It was a really interesting one. There was a lot of anticipation. There was a lot of expectation that this was going to be an amazing weekend. We had the mixed conditions, we had a sprint race, some teams bringing upgrades. But at the end of the day, it turned out to be a fairly dull race. What did you think of it?
Yeah, the anticipation, like you said, the amount of hype on these weather reports, everyone's hands getting stuck out in the paddock, in different parts of the track, being in the grandstand, showing everyone in their ponchos. And then FIA didn't let the cars race until the track was like essentially blue skies. So I don't understand because I feel like everyone was hyping it up to be like another Silverstone, exciting extravaganza, but they kind of ruined the spectacle for what the fans wanted to see in terms of the racing.
It was an abundance of caution. I was going to photograph the first corner, and there were a lot of photographers there. So when they did the first lap and they pulled the red flag because of visibility, it was a great opportunity to reposition and go all the way up to Le Comp. I shouldn't have been able to walk that distance. It should have restarted in half an hour. By the time I got there, the skies were blue, the track looked pretty dry, and they should have started 30 minutes earlier. They're obviously always very nervous about rain at this track because there's been so many big incidents in the past. So I can understand why they're nervous, but it did take away from the possibility of an exciting race. But we shouldn't be relying on the weather to produce good Formula One Grand Prix. We had a dry race for the sprint, and that was also pretty dull. So I think there's a real question about whether current Formula One cars at a track like Spa just don't work. I mean, Spa's almost like Monaco in terms of excitement these days. I think we have to go back to 22 to remember the last amazing Spa Grand Prix.
Yes, and yet it is one of the drivers' favorite tracks, and a lot of them talk about how the qualifying lap at Spa is like one of the moments you live for as an F1 driver going around that track, which is the same thing that they say about Monaco in qualifying. So hopefully the cars next year being slightly smaller might be more conducive to overtakes. And yeah, it would be nice because the track itself is so beautiful. Eau Rouge, it's just a postcard, when you see that cars going up that hill.
Yeah, it is a magnificent track and it deserves to have very, very good racing. And I think you might be right that next year's cars will be a bit better for this track. But yeah, it's a little bit sad. The cars look amazing going through those corners, but yeah, it's just the wheel-to-wheel action isn't there as much. Maybe without DRS, it'll be better. The DRS train seems to be damaging racing in a track like this. Yeah, let's hope for the best.
While there wasn't as much action on track, I feel like there was a lot of action in the paddock with Laurent coming in his Red Bull kit, showing up as team principal for his first race. What was his vibe like when you saw him?
It was very cool. So he arrived on Thursday, which is quite unusual. We don't see the Red Bull team principal usually until Friday, Saturday. So it was pretty cool to see him there on Thursday. He arrived with Yuki, and that was nice to see. It looks like he's really giving Yuki as much support as possible. Yuki got a huge upgrade to his car mid-race weekend, and it seemed like it helped him quite a bit. Looks very, very comfortable in the Red Bull kit. Like he looks like he's been there for a lot longer than just a couple of days.
Yeah, when I saw his interviews over the weekend, the word that comes to mind for me is he looked relaxed. It looked like
Yes.
he was soaking it in. He I'm sure had a ton of media obligations that weekend, but he looked like he was smoothly going from one to the next. And yeah, he looked relaxed. And I mean, Yuki, he's one we need to look out for this coming weekend, as he probably needs a better performance to secure a seat for 2026. And it's great to see that it seems like that familiarity with Laurent has, given him a bit of a boost of confidence and support, which showed this race. It was too bad his qualifying didn't result in a better result during the race itself, but it was at least a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, he does need a very big weekend. You're coming up to the summer break, and that's usually a time when a lot of decisions are made about drivers' futures. This is the point of the season where a lot of teams reflect on how a driver's done throughout the year. And Yuki, look at what he's achieved at Red Bull. It's pretty awful. A big weekend this weekend. He's got the car to be able to do it. He's got the support from the team. Yeah, but he needs a big one. There's a few drivers who need a big one. Franco Colapinto would be another one. There's lots of rumours around people taking the seat from Zandvoort. I've heard Valtteri Bottas, Jack Dern both being mentioned as possible replacements. He's had a difficult time. He's had tracks that haven't suited the car. And he's had a lot of bad luck through mechanical issues and things like that. But he needs to chalk up a good weekend.
Liam, I think also he's had some better performances the last few races. I think points and even Q3 quali appearances, if I'm not mistaken, of the last few races. So Liam seems to have, kind of found his groove a little bit, but someone that's, trying to get back into it.
Yeah, Liam, I think is on an upwards trajectory. I think he's doing quite well. But again, a very good result here wouldn't hurt him either. He did well in Belgium. There's real pressure from Arvid Lindblad, the Red Bull Junior in F2. He scored a podium over the weekend and looked really, really good in F2. And I think he's almost certainly bolted on for an F1 drive next year. So Liam is kind of up against Yuki, up against Isaac, who's had one of the best rookie years so far to try and secure that Racing Bulls seat. And then you've got the more established drivers like Lewis, who is struggling quite a lot. And yeah, he had a mega race coming from the pit lane to fifth. He put the slicks on. He looked excellent. He looked like the old Lewis.
I agree. And I think Lewis's challenges this year has been around qualifying for the most part. And he was super hard on himself when he had two Q3 exits in a row. And he said that's just unacceptable for someone who is a seven-time world champion, like talking about himself. And so it's tough to see that because he's just making his Sunday a lot harder for himself. Yeah, he drove a great race, but if he didn't start from P16, where could he have potentially ended up?
There was a beautiful moment over the weekend where he went into the Mercedes garage to chat to Kimi, who's also having a bit of a rough time at the moment. And yeah, it was wonderful to see him going in there and offering support to a fellow driver.
Kimmy, he is, a fan favorite, everyone's like little sibling. I feel everyone treats him like that. And it must be so tough to be 18 years old and under so much pressure. And he's probably never talked to so many people in his life and then have to get in the car and perform and being on a top team where the expectation is that he is in every single Q3. He's scoring points every single race. And so I'm sure it's just so much on his shoulders. I mean, I'm sure we can look back at our 18-year-old version selves and, no, I mean, from a maturity level, it's out of control.
I think we'll see Lewis do quite well this weekend because okay, he's won the Hungarian Grand Prix 8 times. I suspect one of the issues that he had in Belgium was because it was a sprint weekend, they didn't really have enough time to test and hone the new upgrades that they'd brought to the car. This is a much more normal weekend, and it's a track that he absolutely loves. So I would imagine we see a better Lewis performance this weekend.
Well, fingers crossed. If we think about last year's Hungarian Grand Prix, I think I am still recovering from PTSD of the radio messages to Lando to give up the place to Oscar, which he did at the end, but then the most awkward podium celebration. You could tell that both drivers weren't happy. It was technically Oscar's first win. And so tough. I don't think it was really great for Oscar either to have, this cloud of a little bit of like politicking to some extent on the team and just like strategy calls that could have been made in a better light. And then this concept of papaya rules emerged out of this. But what do you think about those two McLaren boys going into the weekend?
It was quite some race in Belgium. Oscar's very, very aggressive at the start. His racecraft in overtaking in those conditions, I think is probably one of the best around. I got this really good shot of Oscar overtaking him coming up Le Camp. And yeah, so in those sort of situations, Oscar's probably the stronger driver. Going into this weekend, there will be that history from last year.
As much as it pains me to admit this, I do agree with you around Oscar's racecraft and overtaking abilities. He reminds me of Max. He is very strategic about the moments that he picks. He really thinks about the move ahead of the move, it seems, and he's calculating that risk really well when he's planning that overtake. And it seems to have worked 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, it's a lovely race because it's got this sort of end of term vibes about it. Everyone's a lot more chilled and a lot more relaxed. People have got their flip flops on and are ready for the beach and some summer breaks. It's a very nice, very chilled race to bring up the end of the first half.
Yeah, Budapest is on my bucket list for sure to go to the race. I've been to the city and it's a awesome place, great restaurants, great vibe.
It's one of the best races to come to as a fan. It's for the European races, it's probably one of the most cost-effective ones, and the seating options get you very, very close to the cars. So if you're considering a race and you're based in Europe, this is a good one to do.
Great advice. Should we do some predictions, Michael, for this weekend?
Yes, yes. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm going to go with Lando, Oscar, George. Lando to get redemption from last year, and George because he wants to put in a great lasting impression to those final contract negotiations for more money. So those are my top three.
I like that. I really, really like the Lando redemption story. I think that would be brilliant. It would be such good news if he won. I'm going to go slightly differently. I'm going to say Oscar from Lando and Lewis in third. I think Ferrari will be able to get that new floor working, and I think they'll get his brakes adjusted correctly. And it's a track that he loves so much that that'll give him that extra edge over Charles. But Oscar is looking very strong. So, yeah, I think he might continue the run that he's just started in Belgium.
We'll have to recap after and see how we do.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this video. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you want to see some more pictures from the Belgian Grand Prix, there's a link in the description below. And as always, there's a link to all of Milkshake's content in the description. So go and check that out. And until the race, goodbye.